Close your eyes. The past is about to speak. When you think of the Middle Ages, your mind might conjure images of knights in gleaming armor and noble ladies in flowing silks, living within the strong stone walls of a majestic castle. You might imagine grand feasts in echoing halls and life governed by chivalry and romance. But for the vast majority of people, that world was as distant and fantastical as a fairy tale. The reality for you is the city, a chaotic, thriving, and often overwhelmingly smelly maze of timber-framed houses, muddy lanes, and a constant pressing crowd. Honestly, with the lack of sanitation and the sheer noise, you probably wouldn't last a day. It's a world built not on grand gestures, but on the quiet, relentless hum of daily work, where history meets slumber. I wonder where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. Go ahead and post it in the comments if you feel like it. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your awareness returns not with a gentle drift, but with a sharp, unwelcome chill. It seeps through the thin wool of your blanket and the coarse ticking of your mattress, a damp cold that has settled deep into the bones of the house overnight. There is no alarm, no gentle chime to ease you into the day. The only signal is a subtle shift in the quality of the darkness. The blackness of the room is no longer absolute. It has softened to a deep, bruised purple, hinting at a dawn that is still a long way off. Your first breath of the day is a thick, familiar cocktail of scents. The stale air of a sealed room where four people have been sleeping. The faint, sour tang from the chamber pot in the corner, and the lingering ghost of wood smoke from a hearth that died hours ago. You lie still for a moment on your straw-filled pallet, which rests on the floor in the corner of this single, all-purpose room. The straw rustles softly with every tiny movement, a dry, whispering sound. It's lumpy, and you can feel a few stray, sharp stalks poking through the fabric, a constant, minor irritation against your skin. This room is your kitchen, your dining room, your workshop, and your bedroom. Across the small space, you can hear the slow, deep breathing of your parents on their slightly larger pallet, and the softer breaths of your younger brother curled up near them. Privacy is a concept for the very rich, a luxury as unattainable as a silk gown. Here, life is lived in common, a tangle of shared warmth and shared smells. Historians can only piece together the daily existence of common folk like you from tax records, court documents, and the rare archaeological find. They argue about the precise details of homes like this one, but the consensus is one of practicality over comfort. There are no decorations on the wattle and daub walls, no glass in the small, shuttered window. There is just a rough-hewn table, a couple of stools, an iron pot by the cold hearth, and the wooden chest that holds all of your family's worldly possessions. This is the stark reality that the epic poems and chivalric romances leave out. This is where the vast majority of lives are lived. The cold is a powerful motivator. There is no thermostat to argue over, no central heating to lull you back to sleep. Staying under the thin blanket is simply prolonging the inevitable. With a quiet groan that you stifle so as not to wake the others, you push the blanket aside. The air hits your skin with a jolt. You swing your legs off the pallet and your bare feet meet the splintery, uneven wood of the floorboards. The shock of the cold is immediate and absolute, traveling up your legs and making you shiver. You don't linger. Your clothes are folded neatly beside you, a simple linen chemise and a woolen tunic. They are the only set of clothes you own, aside from a slightly better one saved for holidays and church. You pull the chemise over your head. The linen is cool and smells faintly of you. Next comes the tunic, its coarse weave scratching slightly at your neck and arms. It's a familiar feeling, one you've known your whole life, the texture of practicality. You don't think about fashion or color. You think about warmth and durability. This garment needs to last for years, not a season. As you dress in the semi-darkness, the city outside is beginning to stir. The first sound to pierce the quiet of your room is not a bird, but a bell. A deep, resonant tone from a nearby church, calling the most devout to their first prayers of the day. It's a sound that structures time here, more reliable than the sun on a cloudy day. Soon, it will be followed by others. The distant rumble of a cart's wooden wheels on cobblestones, the first shouts of vendors setting up their stalls, the lowing of an ox being led to market. The city is a living thing, and it is slowly, groggily waking up. Your first task of the day is always the same. You feel your way to the corner, find the handle of the ceramic chamber pot, and carefully lift it. It's heavy, and you move with practiced slowness to avoid sloshing the contents. You unlatch the heavy wooden door to your small home, which opens directly onto a narrow, muddy lane. The air outside is even colder and carries a new collection of smells: the damp earth, the wet thatch of the roofs, and the ever-present, city-wide smell of waste. There is no sophisticated sewer system here. The solution is simple and direct. With a quick look to make sure no one is passing, you heave the contents of the pot into the central gutter that runs down the middle of the lane. It's a task repeated by hundreds of households every single morning, a collective act of sanitation that, paradoxically, makes the streets so unsanitary. You don't think of it as disgusting. It's just a fact of life, as normal as breathing. It's one of the first of 1,000 unglamorous, necessary tasks that keep the city functioning. And your day, a day of unexpected and forgotten work, has just begun. You step back inside, securing the heavy wooden bar across the door, plunging the room back into a dim, candlelit world. The brief exposure to the frigid morning air makes the relative warmth of the house feel almost cozy. Your mother is already moving, her form a familiar shadow in the low light. She doesn't speak, and neither do you. The early morning hours are for work, not words. A silent understanding passes between you as she gestures toward the large, shallow wooden trough that leans against the wall. This is your family's business. Your father is the baker, a member of the Bakers' Guild. But the work, the real hour-by-hour labor, is a family affair. And this first, crucial stage of it falls to the women of the house. Your mother is already at the hearth, skillfully coaxing the embers from last night back to life. She adds small, dry twigs, blowing on them with a soft, controlled breath until a tiny flame flickers, catching and growing with a quiet crackling sound. This fire will heat the massive brick oven built into the side of the house, its dark opening like a cave next to the hearth. You, meanwhile, have dragged the heavy kneading trough to the center of the room. Your task is to prepare the dough. You scoop flour from a large sack in the corner. The flour is coarse, grayish white, and puffs up in a soft cloud that dusts your tunic and sticks to your eyelashes. It has a dry, earthy smell. There's no perfectly refined, snow-white flour here. This is ground at the local mill, and it often contains tiny specks of grit from the millstone, a texture you're so used to in your daily bread that you'd find its absence strange. You pour water from a bucket, then add the starter, the leaven, a bubbling, living piece of dough saved from yesterday's batch. It smells sour and alcoholic, but it is the lifeblood of the bakery. Without it, you would have only flat, hard crackers. You plunge your hands into the mixture. It's cold and sloppy at first, a disgusting paste that clings to your fingers and squishes in a most unpleasant way. But as you begin to work it, to fold and push and turn, it begins to transform. This is work you know in your bones, a rhythm your muscles have memorized. You put your whole body into it, leaning your weight into the trough, using your shoulders and back to force the dough into submission. Your arms begin to ache, a deep, familiar burn. This is your morning exercise, a pre-dawn workout whose only reward is the promise of more work to come. As you need, your mother works beside you, her movements efficient and sure. She is the master of this domain, while your father's name is on the guild register, giving him the right to bake and sell bread in this city. Your mother is the engine of the operation. This is a common arrangement, a silent partnership that powers countless small businesses. The guilds, the powerful organizations that control every trade from candle making to metal working, are male-dominated institutions. They set the prices, they enforce the quality standards, and they punish anyone who tries to operate outside their rules. But behind the official male member is almost always a wife, a daughter, a sister, whose labor is just as vital. Historians often debate the true extent of female power within these structures. While the official records rarely list a woman's name, private accounts and legal documents often tell a different story, showing women managing the finances, dealing with suppliers, and running the shop front. If a baker like your father were to die, his widow would often be granted the right to continue the business, becoming a femme sole, a woman legally independent and recognized by the guild. It's a startling bit of agency in a world that seems, on the surface, to offer so little. Your mother may not attend the guild meetings, but she knows the price of wheat better than your father does, and she knows every customer by name. The dough is finally ready. It has transformed from a sticky mess into a smooth, elastic being, warm and alive under your hands. It makes a soft, satisfying sighing sound as you press into it. You cover the great mound with a damp cloth and move the trough closer to the growing warmth of the hearth, allowing the leaven to work its magic. Now, your attention turns to the oven. It is a temperamental beast, and heating it correctly is an art form. There is no temperature gauge. Your mother judges the heat by holding her hand inside for a few seconds, by the color of the stones, by an instinct born of thousands of repetitions. It's a form of knowledge that no book could teach. While the oven heats and the dough rises, You begin to shape the loaves for the first bake of the day. Small, round rolls for workmen to buy on their way to their jobs, and larger, darker loaves of rye and barley for the households who can't afford to bake for themselves. Each loaf must be a specific, regulated weight. The guild has inspectors who can show up at any time, and the penalty for selling underweight bread, an act known as short-changing, is severe. Public humiliation or a hefty fine are the usual punishments. There are no five-star reviews to worry about, but the threat of the guild inspector is a far more immediate and terrifying prospect. Soon, the oven is ready. A deep, radiating heat now fills the room, chasing away the last of the night's chill. The first batch of loaves is slid inside on a long wooden paddle called a peel. The heavy iron door is closed, and now you wait. The smell in the room begins to change, the sour scent of the leaven giving way to the most comforting smell in the world. Baking bread. It's a rich, warm, wholesome aroma that will soon spill out into the lane, a siren call to the hungry city. It's the smell of survival, of commerce, of the daily miracle that turns grit-filled flour and water into life itself. This is the unseen, uncelebrated foundation of the city's day, and you are at its very heart. The first loaves are out, their crusts a beautiful golden brown, crackling softly as they cool on wooden racks. The air is now thick with their irresistible scent, a fragrance so potent it feels like you could eat it. Your father, now awake and dressed, gives the loaves a critical eye, tapping their bottoms to hear the satisfying hollow sound that indicates a perfect bake. He handles the heavy peel with practiced ease, sliding the next batch of shaped dough into the oven's fiery mouth. Your task, however, is not to admire the product. Your task is delivery. Your mother wraps a half dozen of the warm, round rolls in a rough linen cloth and places them into a large, shallow wicker basket. To the alewife, she says, her voice still low and raspy from sleep. Be quick. The morning drinkers will be thirsty. It's a journey you've made 100 times. You hoist the basket onto your hip. It's not heavy, but it's awkward, and the warmth of the bread seeps through the cloth and your tunic, a pleasant heat against your side. You unbar the door again and step out into the lane. The city is fully awake now. The bruised purple of pre-dawn has given way to a thin, gray light. The lane is no longer empty. A man leads a grumbling pig on a rope. A few apprentices hurry along with tools over their shoulders, and a woman opposite your house is vigorously sweeping her doorstep. The air is a symphony of urban life. The distant, rhythmic sound of a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil, the shouts of merchants calling out their wares, the squeak of an ungreased cart axle, and the incessant barking of a dog somewhere down the lane. The smell of your bread now competes with 100 other odors. The pungent tang of a tanner's yard, the savory smoke from a cookshop, and the ever-present, underlying funk of the gutter. You walk with a steady, purposeful stride, your worn leather shoes, your most prized possession, finding sure footing on the uneven cobblestones. You know every dip and crack in this path. Navigating a medieval city isn't just about knowing the streets. It's about knowing the ground beneath your feet to avoid a turned ankle or a slip into something unpleasant. Your destination is a tavern, just 2 streets over. The sign above its door is a simple, painted bush of hops, the traditional symbol for a place that brews and sells ale. This establishment, like many of its kind, is run by a woman. She is the alewife. In an era when most professions were being consolidated into male-dominated guilds, brewing remained a largely female domain. It was a natural extension of household duties, often called domestic brewing. Women had been brewing for their families for centuries, and selling the surplus was a common way to earn extra income. As you push open the heavy oak door of the tavern, you're met with a wall of noise and a new, distinct smell. The air inside is warm and humid, thick with the scent of spilled ale, sawdust, and unwashed men. It's a yeasty, slightly sweet, and very human smell. A handful of laborers are already there, hunched over wooden cups on rough-hewn tables. Their voices are low and gravelly, a quiet murmur before the day's hard work begins. The floor is covered in a thick layer of sawdust and rushes, meant to soak up spills and whatever else might fall. There are no fancy decorations, just a few benches, some sturdy tables, and a large hearth where a fire crackles merrily. It's not charming, it's functional. Behind a long wooden counter stands the alewife, a formidable woman named Agnes. She has a broad, no-nonsense face and arms as thick as your legs from lifting heavy barrels. She gives you a quick, approving nod as you approach. "Right on time," she says, her voice a loud, clear boom that easily cuts through the tavern's low hum. "They're hungry this morning." You place the warm rolls on the counter. Agnes inspects one, breaks it in half with a sharp crack, and nods again. The crumb is good. She reaches into a leather pouch tied at her waist and pulls out a few small, thin copper coins, which she drops into your hand. They feel cool and smooth against your skin. This simple transaction is a cornerstone of the city's economy. Women like your mother and Agnes are nodes in a complex network of production and consumption, operating businesses that are essential to the city's daily rhythm. Historians have found that women were not just selling surplus homebrew. Many, like Agnes, were running full-scale commercial operations. They were the brewers, the managers, and the bouncers of these vital social spaces. Taverns were more than just places to drink. They were community centers, business hubs, and news exchanges. A traveler might find a bed here. A merchant might seal a deal over a cup of ale, and political gossip would spread like wildfire. The alewife was at the center of it all, a respected and often powerful figure in her community. Of course, the profession also had its less savory side. Alewives were often stereotyped in popular songs and stories as dishonest, watering down their ale or overcharging their customers. This stereotype, some scholars argue, grew stronger as men began to form brewers' guilds and push women out of the increasingly profitable trade. For now, however, Agnes is in charge. She gestures with her chin towards one of the tables. "Go on, a sip for your trouble. It's a common courtesy." She pours a small amount of dark, cloudy ale into a wooden cup and pushes it toward you. You take a sip. It's not the light, fizzy beverage you might think of today. This ale is thick, slightly sweet, and very nutritious, often called liquid bread. It's low in alcohol, especially the batch for the morning, and is considered a safer drink than the often contaminated water. The taste is malty and unfiltered, and you can feel its warmth spread through your chest. It's the taste of fuel for the common person. You give Agnes a grateful look, wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, and turn to leave. Your first job is done, the first coins of the day are earned, and the city's vast, sprawling marketplace awaits. The real chaos is about to begin. Leaving the relative warmth of the tavern, the morning air feels sharp again on your cheeks. Your basket is empty now, swinging lightly at your side as you make your way toward the city's heart. The market. The sounds grow louder with every step, the low hum of the side streets swelling into a full-throated roar. You are not headed for a single, designated market square, but rather a series of streets and open spaces where commerce has permanently spilled over, a chaotic and semi-permanent fixture of urban life. You turn a corner and are immediately swallowed by the crowd. The sheer density of people is overwhelming. You have to turn your shoulders sideways to squeeze through gaps, your hand instinctively going to the small pouch at your belt where you tucked the alewife's coins. This is the world of the cut purse and the pickpocket, and you've been taught from a young age to be vigilant. The crowd is a river of humanity, soberly dressed merchants, rough-handed laborers, priests in dark robes, children darting underfoot like mice, and even a richly dressed nobleman's wife with two servants clearing a path before her. You are just one small, anonymous fish in this churning sea. The air here is a dizzying assault on the senses. It's a tapestry woven from 1,000 different threads of scent. You smell the sharp, metallic tang of a butcher's stall, the sweet, cloying perfume of a spice merchant's display, the earthy dampness of root vegetables piled high on a canvas sheet, and the pungent, unmistakable odor of live chickens crammed into a wooden cage. The sounds are just as dense. The roar of the crowd is layered with individual noises, the bleating of a goat, the high-pitched cry of a fishmonger advertising his morning's catch, the persuasive murmur of a woman selling cloth, the angry squawk of a goose, and the jingle of 100 different coins. Your mother has given you a list of things to buy, a mental list you've carefully memorized. First, to the dairy sellers. You navigate your way to a specific part of the market where the air grows cooler and smells of soured milk and cheese. Here, women from the surrounding countryside and from within the city itself have set up their stalls. They are the she-merchants, the entrepreneurs of the market. They sit on low stools behind simple wooden planks laid over barrels, their wares displayed before them. Rounds of pale cheese wrapped in cheesecloth, pats of yellow butter on cool green leaves, and open buckets of milk. You approach a woman whose face you recognize. She is a regrader, someone who buys goods from the producers and resells them in smaller quantities in the market. This was a trade dominated by women. It required little initial investment, just a good head for bartering and a strong constitution. These women were the crucial link in the food supply chain, breaking down bulk goods into affordable portions for individual households. You need a small pat of butter and a wedge of hard cheese. You point to what you want, and the woman, without a word, cuts a piece of cheese with a sharp knife and slaps a scoop of butter onto a leaf. The transaction is a silent dance of negotiation. She names a price with a gesture of her fingers. You counter by holding up one fewer finger. She scowls, a piece of well-rehearsed market theater. You stand your ground. This isn't about being cheap. It's the expected ritual. To accept the first price would be a sign of foolishness. She finally gives a curt nod, and you hand over two of your precious copper coins. She wraps your purchases in a clean, damp cloth and places them in your basket. There's no branded packaging, no expiration dates, just the implicit trust that the food is good. A trust built on seeing the same faces in the same spots, day after day. Next, you need leeks and onions. You push deeper into the market to where the vegetable sellers are clustered. Here again, women are a common sight, running stalls piled high with the produce they've either grown in their own small garden plots within the city walls or purchased from farmers at the city gates at dawn. You see heaps of muddy carrots, piles of dark green cabbages, and baskets overflowing with onions. The colors are vibrant and earthy against the gray backdrop of the city. A particularly shocking historical tidbit is the sheer level of regulation these market women operated under. It wasn't a free-for-all. City authorities employed officials to check weights and measures, to ensure food was not stale, corrupt, or unwholesome, and to enforce strict rules about where and when certain goods could be sold. A woman caught selling rotten produce could have her goods confiscated and be publicly shamed, sometimes by being forced to sit in the stocks with the offending food tied around her neck. It's a far cry from a simple farmer's market. It's a high-stakes, tightly controlled economic battlefield. You find a woman with a good supply of fresh-looking leeks. The price is fair, and you don't need to haggle this time. As she bundles them for you, tying them with a piece of twine, you overhear her arguing with the merchant at the next stall, a man selling pottery. The argument is not about prices, but about space. His pots are encroaching on her patch. She is not deferential or quiet. Her voice is loud and her arguments are sharp. She holds her ground, gesturing emphatically, until the man grudgingly moves his wares back an inch. It's a small victory, but a powerful reminder that the women of the market were not passive victims. They were savvy, tough, and fiercely protective of their livelihood. You place the leeks and onions in your basket next to the cheese and butter. The basket is getting heavier now. You have one more, very different errand to run, one that will take you away from the raw, earthy world of the food market and into a realm of much finer, more delicate work. A realm that in some cities was entirely and exclusively the domain of women. The world of silk. You adjust the heavy basket on your hip, take a deep breath of the chaotic, scent-laden air, and begin to push your way back through the relentless current of the crowd. You finally extricate yourself from the main crush of the market, your basket now heavy with the day's provisions. Your next destination lies in a quieter, more prosperous-looking street. The timber-framed houses here are larger, with more intricate carvings on their beams. The upper stories jut out further over the street, casting the lane below in a permanent, cool shadow. There are even a few houses with small panes of greenish glass in their windows, a sign of considerable wealth. The smells here are different, too. The raw, organic scents of the food market are replaced by something more refined. The faint aroma of beeswax polish, the clean scent of expensive soap, and from one open doorway, the delicate fragrance of imported spices. Your errand is for your mother, but it's not for your household. It's a favor for a wealthy patron's wife, a task that has fallen to your family because of your reliability. You are to pick up a small order of finished silk thread. You stop before a house that is indistinguishable from its neighbors, save for the exceptional neatness of its doorstep. There is no guild sign here, no painted advertisement. The business conducted within is known to those who need to know it, its reputation spread by word of mouth among the city's elite. You give the heavy oak door a few firm raps with your knuckles. The sound is absorbed by the thick wood. After a moment, you hear the scrape of a bolt being drawn, and the door opens a crack. A young woman, not much older than you, peers out. Her hair is neatly covered by a crisp linen cap, and her apron is immaculately clean. She sees the basket on your hip and seems to understand your purpose. Without a word, she opens the door wider and lets you in, closing and bolting it swiftly behind you. The room you enter is startlingly quiet. The roar of the city is gone, muffled by the thick walls and heavy door. The light is soft, coming from a large, south-facing window that is, indeed, glazed with expensive glass. The air inside is warm and smells faintly of spun fiber and something else, a clean, slightly sharp scent you can't quite place. This is the workshop of a silkwoman. In several European cities, particularly Paris and Cologne, the production of silk goods was a trade controlled entirely by women. They formed their own guilds, wrote their own regulations, took on their own apprentices, who had to be female, and fiercely guarded their monopoly. While men might be involved in the importing of the raw silk cocoons from Italy or further east, the delicate, highly skilled work of transforming those cocoons into usable thread, and then into finished products like ribbons, veils, and hairnets, was exclusively women's work. An older woman, the mistress of the workshop, sits on a stool near the window, her hands moving with a fluid, mesmerizing grace. She is reeling silk, drawing a single, impossibly fine filament from a basin of hot water where cocoons are soaking. This is the source of the sharp, clean smell. The boiling water dissolves the gummy substance that holds the cocoon together. It is a process of incredible delicacy. The filament is almost invisible, and if it breaks, she must find the end in the hot water and reattach it with a deft twist of her fingers. Two other women sit in another corner, working at small looms, not for weaving broadcloth, but for creating intricate ribbons and decorative borders. The only sounds in the room are the soft bubbling of the water, the gentle click-clack of the small looms, and the quiet breathing of the women. It is a world away from the sweaty, physical labor of the bakery or the boisterous chaos of the market. This is a place of intense focus and refined skill. The young woman who let you in goes to a large wooden chest and lifts the lid. She pulls out a small, carefully wrapped parcel. The mistress gives you a brief, assessing glance. She doesn't smile, but her expression isn't unkind. It's the look of a busy professional who has no time for idle chatter. "From the baker's family?" she asks, her voice soft but clear. You nod. She looks at the parcel the apprentice is holding. "Tell the lady it is the best quality. The new shipment from Lucca was very fine." The apprentice hands you the small package. It is surprisingly heavy for its size. You place it carefully in your basket, making sure it doesn't get crushed by the onions. This small bundle of silk thread is likely worth more than all the food in your basket combined, perhaps more than your family might earn in a month. It represents a different kind of economy, one based not on sustenance but on luxury. The existence of female-only guilds like the silk spinners is a powerful counter-narrative to the idea that medieval women were universally powerless in the economic sphere. These were not quaint hobby circles. They were serious, professional organizations that wielded real power. They negotiated with city councils, set wages, and controlled a lucrative market. Historians still study the specific social and economic conditions that allowed these female monopolies to arise in some cities but not others. Was it the perceived delicacy of the work, deeming it women's work? Or was it a canny move by women to corner a new market before men recognized its full value? The answer is likely a complex mix of factors. What is certain is that a woman like the mistress of this workshop was a highly respected figure. She was a business owner, an employer, and a master of a difficult and valuable craft. She would have had status and a degree of independence that was unimaginable for most women, and indeed for most men. The apprentice unbolts the door and lets you out. Stepping back into the lane feels like waking from a dream. The city's noise rushes back in. The smells of common life reassert themselves. The quiet, disciplined, and surprisingly powerful world of the silkwomen is hidden away again behind its plain oak door. You adjust your basket, newly conscious of its precious cargo nestled amongst the mundane groceries. Your errands are taking you on a tour of the city's female economy, from the most basic sustenance to the highest forms of luxury craft. And your next stop will be to procure something everyone, rich or poor, needs to push back the darkness: light itself. Your path now leads you away from the prosperous street of the silkwoman and back into the more utilitarian heart of the city. You need to buy candles, a household staple as essential as bread or salt. The sun is climbing higher in the sky, a pale disk in the hazy gray, but you are already thinking of the night to come. The darkness in a medieval city is profound, an almost tangible thing that swallows the narrow lanes and fills the unlit rooms of its houses. Pushing back that darkness is a constant effort, and it comes at a cost. You head for a street known for its chandlers. You can smell it before you see it. It's a distinctive, slightly greasy scent, a combination of melted fat and beeswax. It's not an unpleasant smell, but it is heavy and pervasive, clinging to the front of the buildings and lying thick in the air. The workshops here are messy, their doorways darkened with soot and spills. You stop at a familiar one. Like many small craft shops, it is open to the street, the front of the ground floor serving as both workshop and retail space. Inside, a woman is busy at work. She is the chandler, the candle maker. Her hands and forearms are slick with grease, and her apron, made of heavy, dark leather, is stiff with accumulated wax and tallow. This is another trade where women were heavily involved, though they rarely had their own exclusive guild like the silkwomen. More often, they worked alongside their husbands or, as widows, continued the family business. The workshop is a chaotic but organized space. In the center, a large cauldron sits over a banked fire, its contents emitting the greasy, fatty smell. This is tallow, rendered animal fat, the cheapest and most common fuel for candles. It's what most people, including your family, can afford. The light it gives off is smoky, guttering, and it produces a distinct, animalic odor as it burns. There's a reason people in stories are always going to bed at dusk. It's not because they were tired. It's because lighting your home was expensive and, in the case of tallow candles, rather smelly. The woman is making dipped candles. On a large rack, dozens of wicks made of twisted rush or flax hang from a series of rods. She takes a rod, dips the wicks into the hot tallow, pulls them out, and hangs the rod back on the rack to cool. With each dip, a new layer of fat congeals onto the wick and the candles grow incrementally thicker. It's a slow, repetitive, and deeply monotonous process. Her movements are economical and practiced, her body swaying in a steady rhythm. Dip, lift, hang, repeat. There is no machine to speed the process, just her two hands and an immense amount of patience. In another corner of the shop, you see the evidence of the more expensive side of her trade: beeswax. Large, golden yellow cakes of it are stacked on a table, smelling faintly sweet and honeyed. Beeswax candles were the luxury option. They burned with a clean, bright, steady light and gave off a pleasant, subtle aroma. They were used in churches and in the homes of the very wealthy. The price difference was enormous. One beeswax candle could cost as much as 6 or 8 tallow candles. It was a clear, visible marker of social status. A modern equivalent might be the difference between a cheap, flickering light bulb and a sophisticated, custom-lit chandelier. You wait for the chandler to finish her current round of dips. She sees you and gives you a weary but friendly smile, wiping her greasy hands on an already filthy rag. "Just the usual?" she asks. You nod. You need a bundle of the tallow dips, enough to last the family for a week or two. She moves to the front of the shop where her finished products are displayed. There are bundles of brownish, lumpy tallow candles tied with string, and a smaller, more elegant display of smooth, golden beeswax candles. She picks up a bundle of the tallow ones and hands them to you. You can feel the slight greasiness of their surface even through the paper wrapping she uses. You pay her, and she tucks the coins into a pouch that is just as stained as her apron. As you place the candles in your basket, you notice the tools of her trade. There are molds for creating more uniform candles, a specialized craft in itself. A quirky historical fact is that in some places, chandlers were also involved in making another, seemingly unrelated product. Soap, the base ingredients, fat and lye, derived from wood ash, were readily available to them. It's a fascinating example of how medieval craftspeople diversified their skills based on the materials they had at hand. A chandler's workshop might smell of tallow and beeswax one day, and of harsh, caustic soap the next. Scholars sometimes speculate about the health effects on people like this chandler, constantly inhaling the fumes from the simmering cauldrons. The distinction between a craft and a form of industrial pollution was non-existent. The smells and substances of your trade were simply the smells and substances of your life, seeping into your clothes, your skin, and your lungs. You thank the woman and leave her to her rhythmic, greasy work. Her labor, and that of countless women like her, was absolutely essential. Without her, the city would plunge into absolute darkness at sunset. Hospitals couldn't function, scholars couldn't read, and the simple act of moving around one's own home at night would become a hazardous ordeal. She is a purveyor of one of the most fundamental human needs, the need for light. Your basket is now truly full. It contains the bread of life, the riches of the market, the luxury of silk, and the power to hold back the night. It is a heavy load, a tangible representation of the city's interconnected web of labor. And your stomach is starting to rumble. The sun is high overhead. The morning's work is done, and it's time to find a midday meal. Your stomach is no longer just rumbling, it's protesting loudly. The small sip of ale at the tavern and the memory of the warm bread are long gone. The basket pulls at your shoulder, and the constant press of the crowd is wearing you down. In a medieval city, not everyone had the time, the space, or the fuel to cook a hot meal in the middle of the day. Many laborers lived in single rooms with no hearth, and the cost of firewood was a significant expense. Even in your home, the oven is occupied with baking bread, not roasting meat. So, what does a hungry worker do? You head for the cookshop, the medieval equivalent of fast food. You navigate towards a street known for its cooked food vendors. This area is smoky, the air thick with the smells of roasting meat, boiling cabbage, and frying fat. It's a rich, savory, and slightly chaotic aroma that pulls you in, promising warmth and sustenance. The shops are crowded together, each one a small, bustling enterprise centered around a large, open fire. You choose a shop run by a woman named Beatrice. She is known for her pies. She stands behind a wide plank counter that is laden with food, meat pies with thick, hand-raised crusts, bowls of steaming pottage, a thick vegetable stew, and roasted joints of meat that are still dripping fat onto the coals below. Beatrice is a whirlwind of activity, her face flushed from the heat of the fire, shouting orders to a young helper, serving customers and taking coins, all seemingly at the same time. The cookshop was another vital niche in the urban economy, often filled by women. Like brewing, it was seen as an extension of domestic work, but on a commercial scale. These women provided hot, ready-to-eat meals to the city's vast workforce. The apprentices, the day laborers, the travelers, and anyone else who needed a quick, filling meal. You approach the counter, the heat from the fire washing over you. It's almost too intense after the chill of the morning. "A pie, Beatrice," you say, placing a coin on the counter. "Meat if it's fresh." Beatrice gives you a sharp look. "Everything is fresh," she retorts, but there's a twinkle in her eye. She knows the game. There are no health inspectors checking the freshness of the ingredients, no Yelp reviews to warn you away from a questionable stew. Reputation was everything, and a cookshop owner who made her customers sick wouldn't last long in business. She grabs a pie from a stack near the fire, wraps it in a cabbage leaf, and hands it to you. It's hot, almost too hot to hold. The crust is thick and hard, made of coarse flour and water. This crust, known as a coffin, was often not meant to be eaten. It was a container, a portable cooking vessel that protected the filling from the heat of the oven and kept it moist. You find a relatively quiet corner, a small space between two buildings to eat. You break open the crust. Steam rises, carrying the rich, savory smell of the filling. It's a thick stew of meat, probably mutton or pork. It's hard to tell, mixed with onions, spices, and perhaps some dried fruit. You scoop some of the filling out with a piece of the broken crust. The taste is intensely savory, salty, and warming. The meat is tender, the gravy rich. It's simple, hearty food designed to fuel a body through a long afternoon of physical labor. As you eat, you watch the flow of customers at Beatrice's shop. It's a cross-section of the city's working class. A group of masons, their clothes dusted with stone powder, are sharing a large bowl of pottage. A messenger, still breathless from running, grabs a pie and eats it standing up. A woman from a nearby textile workshop buys a small cup of hot broth. The existence of these cookshops challenges the common misconception that medieval people only ate bland, unseasoned food. While the very poor subsisted on a monotonous diet of bread and pottage, the urban worker had access to a surprising variety of flavors. Cookshops used spices like pepper, cloves, and mace, not just to flavor the food, but also, historians suggest, as a way to mask the taste of meat that might be slightly past its prime. It was a practical solution in an age before refrigeration. Beatrice's cookshop, like the bakery, the tavern, and the chandler's workshop, is a testament to the entrepreneurial spirit of medieval women. They identified a need in the burgeoning urban environment, the need for fast, hot food, and they filled it. They managed complex operations, sourcing ingredients from the market, managing the risks of fire and spoilage, and dealing with a demanding clientele. They were also subject to regulation. City officials sometimes tried to control the prices of cooked food, and there were rules about the quality of the ingredients. A cookshop owner caught selling pies made from diseased meat could face severe penalties. It was a tough business, with long hours, intense heat, and constant pressure. But it offered a path to economic independence, a way for a woman to earn her own living and support her family. You finish your pie, licking the last traces of the savory gravy from your fingers. The warmth of the food has revitalized you, chasing away the fatigue of the morning. You toss the remaining hard crust into the gutter, where it will likely be eaten by a scavenging dog or pig. Nothing is wasted in this city. You pick up your heavy basket, ready to return home and start the afternoon's work. But as you turn to leave the smoky, savory street of the cookshops, you catch a glimpse of something unusual, something that hints at a very different kind of female labor, one not of the hands but of the mind. A woman dressed in sober but fine clothes is hurrying down the street, a leather-bound book clutched tightly in her arms. The sight of the woman with the book is jarring. In a world defined by the physical labor you see all around you, the sweat of the cookshop, the grime of the chandler, the muscle of the bakery, a book is an object from another reality. It's an item of immense value, not just for the cost of its materials, but for the incredible amount of skilled labor required to create it. And seeing one in the hands of a woman, who is not a nun or a great noble lady, but is walking with purpose through the common streets, is unusual enough to make you pause and watch. She disappears around a corner, and a flicker of curiosity makes you adjust your route. You tell yourself it's on the way home, but you are following her. You keep a respectful distance, not wanting to be seen as a threat or a beggar. She moves with a quick, confident step, clearly familiar with the city's labyrinthine layout. She turns down a narrow alley, one you rarely use, and stops before the door of a large, prosperous-looking house, the home of a wealthy wool merchant you know by reputation. She hands the book to a servant who answers the door. A brief, professional exchange takes place, and then she turns and walks away. You have just witnessed a transaction in a hidden world of female literacy and artistry. Before the invention of the printing press, every book was a handmade object. The creation of a single volume could take months, even years. While we often imagine monks toiling away in silent scriptoriums, the reality was more complex. In many cities, the production of books was a commercial trade, and women were a significant part of it. This woman might have been a scribe, a copyist who painstakingly wrote out the text with a quill pen and ink. Her handwriting would have to be clear, consistent, and beautiful. Or she could have been an illuminator, an artist who painted the intricate decorations and miniature illustrations that adorned the most expensive manuscripts. This was a highly respected art form, requiring a steady hand and a deep knowledge of pigments and gold leaf. Perhaps she was a rubricator, a specialist who added the red titles and initials that helped guide the reader through the text. Or she may not have been the creator at all, but a patron. Wealthy urban women were becoming a significant market for books, particularly personal prayer books, known as a Book of Hours. These books were a sign of both piety and status, and wealthy women would commission lavishly decorated copies, specifying the saints and prayers they wanted included. The woman you saw could have been an intermediary, a bookseller, or even the wife of the scribe, delivering the finished product to the client. So before this great story continues, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're enjoying our journey together. Your support means the world. Scholars have pieced together the role of these women from signatures hidden in manuscripts, from guild records that list female members, and from account books of patrons. In Paris, for instance, there was a thriving commercial book trade where women worked alongside men as illuminators and scribes. We know the names of some of these women, like a certain Jean who signed her work in the margins of a manuscript. These small traces are powerful evidence against the myth of universal female illiteracy. While it's true that the majority of women, like the majority of men, could not read or write, a significant and influential minority could. You turn away from the merchant's house, your mind buzzing with this new thought. The work of the baker, the alewife, and the chandler is visible, tangible. You can see it, smell it, taste it. But the work of the mind, the labor of creating and disseminating knowledge and art, is a quieter, more hidden force. Yet it is just as real. That book, now inside the merchant's house, represents hours of focused, seated, and highly skilled labor. The woman who delivered it is part of an economy of intellect and creativity that coexists with the economy of food and fat. You resume your walk home, the weight of the basket on your hip feeling more pronounced. Your errand to the silkwoman and this chance sighting of the book deliverer have shown you two very different kinds of female-dominated, high-status work. They are exceptions, to be sure. Most women's work was, and is, far less glamorous. But their existence paints a richer, more complex picture of the medieval city. It wasn't just a world of peasants and nobles, of men who fought and men who prayed. It was a world of businesswomen, artists, artisans, and entrepreneurs, many of whom were women, quietly and competently carving out their own spheres of influence and power. As you get closer to your own street, the smells of your neighborhood return, familiar and grounding. The smoke from your own bakery's chimney is a welcome sight. You have been gone for hours, a long journey through the city's economic web. You have provisioned the household, run an errand for a patron, and glimpsed worlds of work you are not a part of. Now, you must return to your own. The afternoon will be filled with its own tasks, less exotic than illuminating manuscripts or reeling silk, but just as necessary. And first on that list is a visit to another kind of wise woman, one who deals not in books or threads, but in the fragile health of the human body. Your younger brother has a cough that won't go away, and your mother has sent you for a remedy. After depositing your heavy basket at home and receiving a nod of approval from your mother for your successful trip, you are sent out again almost immediately. Your brother's hacking cough has been a persistent, worrying sound in the small house for the past few days. While your mother has tried the usual remedies, a spoonful of honey, a warm cloth on his chest, the cough lingers. It is time for a more specialized consultation. You are not going to a university-trained physician. Those doctors with their Latin texts and theories of the four humors were rare, expensive, and served only the very wealthy. For the everyday ailments of common folk, you go to the local wise woman, the herbalist, the apothecary. Your destination is a small house tucked away at the edge of the city, near the old wall where wild things still manage to grow in the cracks and forgotten corners. The woman who lives here is old, her face a road map of wrinkles, but her eyes are sharp and intelligent. Some people whisper that she's a witch, a dangerous and foolish accusation. Most, however, see her for what she is, a keeper of ancient knowledge, a woman who understands the secret properties of plants. Her home does not look like a shop. There is no sign, no open counter, but as you approach, you smell it. A complex aromatic scent hangs in the air around her doorway, a mixture of dried herbs, pungent roots, and sweet flowers. It smells like a dry summer field and a damp forest floor all at once. You knock softly on her door. She opens it herself, her small frame wrapped in a dark woolen shawl. She looks at you, then past you as if expecting to see your mother. "The baker's boy," she asks, her voice thin but steady. "His cough is no better," you explain. She nods slowly, a deep, knowing look in her eyes. "I heard it on the wind," she says, a phrase that could be either poetic or literal. She gestures for you to enter. The single room of her house is dim and crowded, but not with furniture. Every available space is filled with the tools of her trade. Bunches of dried herbs hang from the rafters, their leaves brittle and fragrant. Yarrow, chamomile, mint, lavender. On shelves along the walls are dozens of ceramic and wooden jars, each one likely holding a different powdered root, seed, or dried flower. A large mortar and pestle, stained dark with years of use, sits on a table. The air inside is dry and intensely aromatic, so thick with the scent of plants that it feels like you are breathing in the very essence of a garden. This is the domain of the female healer. For centuries, women were the primary caregivers in their families and communities. They were the ones who tended to the sick, delivered the babies, and eased the pain of the dying. This role gave them a deep, practical knowledge of herbal medicine, passed down from mother to daughter through generations. They knew which plants could soothe a fever, which could stop bleeding, and which could ease a troubled stomach. This was not magic. It was a form of folk science, based on generations of trial and error. The old woman listens as you describe your brother's cough, how it sounds when it is worse, if he has a fever. She doesn't examine him, but she listens with an intensity that makes you feel as if she can see him through your words. Her knowledge is based on observation and experience, not on abstract theories. After you finish, she is silent for a moment, her eyes closed. Then she turns to her shelves. Her hands, though gnarled with age, move with purpose and precision. She takes a pinch of this dried leaf, a scoop of that powdered root, a few dried berries from another jar. She measures them with her eye, a practice born of a lifetime of experience. She places them all into the stone mortar. Marshmallow root to soothe the throat, she murmurs, more to herself than to you. Horehound to clear the chest. A bit of licorice to make it sweet. She begins to grind the ingredients together with the pestle. The rhythmic, grinding sound is soft and hypnotic. As she works, a new combined fragrance rises from the mortar, sharp and medicinal. Historians often face a challenge when studying these female healers because their knowledge was oral, not written. They did not leave behind textbooks or scholarly treatises. Their wisdom lived in their minds and was passed on through speech and demonstration. What we know comes from monastic herbals, collections of folk remedies, and sometimes, tragically, from the records of witchcraft trials, where their extensive knowledge of plants was sometimes used as evidence against them. This is one of the great ironies of the period. A woman's deep understanding of the natural world could be seen as both a vital community service and a dangerous sign of dark powers. The old woman finishes grinding and tips the resulting greenish-brown powder onto a small piece of cloth, which she folds neatly and ties with a string. A spoonful of this boiled in water, she instructs. Have him drink it warm, once in the morning and once before he sleeps. You hold out a coin, but she waves it away. Your mother sent me a fresh loaf yesterday, she says. We are square. This is another kind of economy, one based on barter and mutual support, not on cash. It was a system that thrived in the community, a web of favors given and returned that held the social fabric together. You thank her and take the small packet. It feels warm in your hand, a little bundle of hope and ancient wisdom. As you step back out into the street, the ordinary smells of the city seem harsh and crude compared to the complex, organic fragrance of the herbalist's home. You have just interacted with a woman whose profession is one of the oldest in the world. She is a living library of practical, life-saving knowledge, a quiet pillar of her community whose expertise, while unofficial and unwritten, is no less profound than that of the university-trained physician or the guild-certified artisan. Her work is a testament to the enduring power of women as healers and keepers of tradition, a role that has always been, and continues to be, absolutely essential to the well-being of humanity. You walk home with the herbal remedy tucked safely in your tunic, the dusty, fragrant packet a small lump against your ribs. The city seems to have settled into the steady rhythm of the afternoon. The frantic energy of the morning market has subsided, replaced by the diligent, repetitive sounds of workshops in full swing. The scrape of a carpenter's plane, the tap-tap-tap of a cobbler's hammer, the distant, rhythmic thud of a fuller's mallet. Life in the city is a constant hum of productivity. As you turn onto a wider, more residential street, you see a small crowd gathered near the steps of a modest but well-kept stone house. This is unusual. Crowds usually mean a spectacle, a traveling preacher, a street performer, or a public punishment. But this gathering is quiet, their attention focused on two figures standing on the steps. A woman dressed in the sober black of a widow, and a man in the robes of a city official, likely a clerk or a minor magistrate. Curiosity gets the better of you again. You slow your pace, lingering at the edge of the small group of onlookers to hear what is happening. The woman is speaking, and her voice, though not loud, is clear and firm. She is not shouting or weeping. She is arguing. She gestures to the house behind her, then to a document that the clerk is holding. "The deed is in my husband's name, that is true," she says, her tone precise. "But the law is clear. As his widow, I am the rightful heir to this property. His brother has no claim." The clerk looks uncomfortable. He shifts his weight from foot to foot, his eyes scanning the document. "Master Thomas presents a contract," the clerk says, his voice weak compared to hers. "A debt owed by your late husband with the house as collateral. A debt he claims was never repaid," the widow counters instantly. "I have the quittance, the proof of payment, signed by Thomas himself 2 years ago. My husband was a meticulous man." She speaks with such conviction, such unwavering certainty, that the crowd murmurs in support of her. She is not a hysterical woman appealing for pity. She is a litigant making a legal case. This scene is a stunning refutation of the common belief that medieval women had no legal rights. The reality, as always, is far more complicated and varied, depending on location, time, and social class. While it's true that a married woman's legal identity was often subsumed by her husband's under a system known as coverture, a widow was a different story. As a femme sole, a legally independent woman, a widow could, and often did, wield considerable power. She could own property, run a business, make contracts, and, as you are witnessing, sue and be sued in court. The widow in front of you is a perfect example of this. She is not relying on a male relative to argue for her. She is her own advocate, armed with knowledge of the law and, crucially, with documentary evidence. Her mention of the quittance, the receipt, shows a familiarity with legal and financial paperwork that is deeply impressive. She understands the power of the written word in a legal dispute. This moment highlights a crucial aspect of women's work that is often overlooked: the management of household, legal, and financial affairs. While the husband might be the public face of the family, the wife was often the one who kept track of debts, payments, and contracts. She knew what was owed and what was owned. For a woman to be widowed was a personal tragedy, but it could also be a moment of legal transformation, thrusting her into a new role as the head of her household, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. Of course, the system was still heavily weighted in favor of men. A woman's testimony might not be valued as highly as a man's, and she would have faced immense social pressure. But the legal framework for her to assert her rights did exist. Historians examining court rolls from this period are often surprised by the sheer number of cases brought by women, particularly widows and single women, who were actively using the legal system to defend their property, enforce contracts, and protect their inheritances. They were not passive victims of a patriarchal system. They were active participants, using the tools available to them to navigate and survive in a complex world. The clerk, clearly outmatched by the widow's preparedness, seems to be capitulating. "I will have to consult the magistrate," he stammers, rolling up the document. "The claim from Master Thomas will be reviewed in light of your evidence." The widow gives a short, sharp nod, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. "See that it is," she says, her voice leaving no room for argument. She turns and with a straight back and a dignified air re-enters her house, closing the door firmly behind her. The show is over. The crowd begins to disperse, muttering about the audacity of the brother-in-law and the impressive resilience of the widow. You walk on, a new layer of understanding added to your perception of the city. You have seen women's work in the form of food, craft, and medicine. Now you have seen it in the form of legal strategy and self-advocacy. The city is held together not just by bread and ale, but by laws and contracts, and women were not excluded from that world. They were in it, fighting for their place, defending their homes and their livelihoods with sharp minds and unwavering resolve. You arrive at your own door, the herbal remedy in hand, feeling that you have learned more on your errands this day than in a year of sermons. The city is a far more intricate and surprising place than you ever imagined. Back in the familiar, flower-dusted warmth of your home, you deliver the herbal remedy to your mother. She takes it with a grateful nod and sets about preparing the infusion for your brother, who is resting on his pallet, his cough a soft, rhythmic counterpoint to the sounds of the household. The big bake of the day is over, the last of the loaves sold or set aside for the family. The air in the room, while still warm, no longer carries the intense, toasty scent of baking bread. Instead, it holds the smell of the day's labor, a faint mix of sweat, flour, and wood smoke. Your father is now gone, off to a guild meeting or perhaps sharing an afternoon ale with other tradesmen. The business of the afternoon falls to you and your mother, and it is a different kind of work. Your mother retrieves a large bundle of raw, greasy wool from a sack in the corner. The next stage of the textile process begins at home, and it is almost universally women's work. She hands you a pair of cards, two flat wooden paddles with wire teeth, and takes a pair for herself. You both sit on low stools near the door for light and begin to card the wool. You take a tuft of the matted, dirty fleece and place it between the two cards. Then you pull them against each other, the wire teeth teasing and combing the fibers, pulling them all into alignment. It's a repetitive, almost meditative task. Scrape, pull. The wool is full of lanolin, a natural grease that makes your hands slick and soft, but it also contains bits of dirt, twigs, and other debris from the sheep's life, which you pick out as you go. The purpose is to prepare the wool for spinning, to turn a chaotic clump into a smooth, airy roll of fibers called a rawlag. As you work, the rhythmic scraping of the cards fills the room. It's a domestic sound, a sound of quiet industry. From an open window across the lane, you can hear the same sound coming from another house. All over the city, in the quiet hours of the afternoon, women are processing fiber, their hands engaged in this ancient, essential task. After an hour of carding, you have a basket full of fluffy rawlags. Your mother then fetches her spindle and distaff. The distaff is a short stick onto which she loosely winds a large mass of the carded wool. She tucks the distaff into her belt, freeing up her hands. With one hand, she draws out a small amount of fiber, and with the other, she sets the spindle spinning like a top. The spinning motion twists the fibers together, transforming the weak, airy wool into strong, consistent thread. Her fingers move with an unconscious, inherited grace, feeding the wool, controlling the tension, letting the spindle drop towards the floor as it fills with newly spun yarn. This is an image of female labor that has persisted for millennia. Spinning was so intrinsically linked with womanhood that the distaff side of a family referred to the maternal line. It was a skill every girl was expected to learn. It was also a portable task. Women would spin while watching children, while walking to the market, while gossiping with neighbors. It was the original form of multitasking, a way to ensure that no waking moment was unproductive. While spinning was a domestic task, it was also a vital part of a massive industry. The textile trade was the engine of the medieval economy in many regions, more important than any other craft, and its foundation was the yarn spun by countless anonymous women in their homes. They were the primary producers for a global supply chain that stretched from the sheep pastures of the countryside to the great cloth markets of Flanders and Italy. Some of this yarn would be used at home to knit stockings or mend clothes, but much of it would be sold. A woman's surplus yarn could be a crucial source of income for the family, a little extra money for food, fees, or a small luxury. This spinster economy, a term that now refers to an unmarried woman but originally just meant a female spinner, was a powerful, if largely invisible, economic force. Once enough yarn is spun, it must be woven into cloth. While your family's work stops at the yarn stage, you know what comes next. Your afternoon task is to deliver the spun yarn to a nearby weaver's workshop. You bundle the finished spindles of yarn into your basket, the same basket from this morning, now on its third journey of the day, and head out once more. The weaver's workshop is a noisy place. You can hear the rhythmic, percussive sound of the loom from down the street. It's a loud, wooden sound, a solid thud and clatter that sets the very air vibrating. Inside, the source of the noise is a massive wooden loom that takes up most of the room. A woman is seated at the loom, her feet working the treadles below, her hands flying as she throws the shuttle back and forth between the threads of the warp. Weaving was a physically demanding job. Pushing the heavy beater bar to pack the threads tightly required significant upper body strength, and working the treadles was a constant workout for the legs. While men were often the master weavers in the guilds, women were heavily employed in the trade, especially on smaller, narrower looms used for making simpler cloths. You watch the weaver for a moment, mesmerized by the coordination and strength her work requires. The cloth grows by millimeters with each pass of the shuttle, a slow, methodical creation. The weaver's workshop, much like the silkwoman's, had its own unique smell. The clean, slightly oily scent of the wool yarn, the faint sighs used to stiffen the threads, and the woody smell of the loom itself. It is the smell of production, of raw material being transformed into a valuable commodity through sheer human effort. The weaver stops her work to inspect the yarn you've brought. She tests its strength between her fingers, checks its consistency. She nods, satisfied. This is a business transaction, but it feels like a collaboration. Your family's quiet, domestic labor has provided the raw material for her loud, industrial work. Together, you are part of a chain of production that clothes the city. You leave the weaver to her rhythmic toil and walk home through the late afternoon light. The day is beginning to wane. You have seen women's work that is hot and frantic, quiet and delicate, intellectual and fierce, and now strong and industrial. Each role is a thread in the complex fabric of the city's life, a testament to the resilience and adaptability of women who found ways to contribute, to earn, and to thrive in a world that rarely recorded their names but depended completely on their labor. The sun is beginning to dip lower, painting the sky in softer shades of orange and pink, but your day is not yet done. There is one final errand, a task that takes you to the edge of the city, down by the river that flows sluggishly past the outer walls. The air here is cooler, carrying the damp, earthy smell of the water and the wet mud of its banks. This is not the pleasant, recreational waterfront of a modern city. This is a place of industry and hard, wet work. You are here to pick up a small bundle of laundry. Your family's best tunics, the ones saved for church on Sunday, were dropped off 2 days ago to be properly washed. While your family, like most, would rinse out everyday garments in a bucket at home, a real, thorough washing was a major undertaking. And for those who could afford the small fee, it was a task outsourced to specialists. Those specialists were the laundresses. As you approach the riverbank, you see them at work. A dozen or so women are scattered along the water's edge, their skirts hitched up to their knees, their arms submerged in the cold river water. This is arguably one of the most physically demanding and lowest status jobs a woman could have. Yet it was utterly essential for the hygiene and comfort of the city. The laundresses stand in the shallows, their bare feet sinking into the slick, cold mud. They have large wooden tubs set on the bank, but the main work happens in the river itself. They take a garment, a linen shirt, a woolen tunic, and plunge it into the moving water. Then the real work begins. They beat the wet cloth against a large, smooth stone, the sound a series of wet, slapping noises that echo over the water. This percussive action is what forces the dirt out of the coarse fibers. There is no delicate wash cycle here, just brute force. Next, they scrub the garment, often with a harsh soap made from lye and animal fat, the same kind the chandler might produce. Their hands are red and raw from the constant immersion in cold water and the caustic soap. Then comes the rinsing, dipping the garment again and again into the river to wash away the soap and remaining dirt. Finally, with a great effort of twisting and wringing, they force as much water as they can from the heavy, sodden cloth. You watch them, a line of women bent over the water, their backs aching, their hands chapped and sore. It is relentless, back-breaking labor. There is no shelter from the sun in summer or the biting wind in winter. Their workshop is the open riverbank, their tools the stones and their own bodies. You find the woman you are looking for, a laundress named Elspeth. She straightens up as you approach, wiping her wet hands on her already damp apron and arching her back with a soft groan. Her face is weathered from the elements, but she gives you a tired smile. "Ah, the baker's child," she says. "It's ready, laid out to dry on the bushes." She leads you away from the riverbank to a nearby patch of low-growing shrubs and gorse, which serves as a communal drying rack. The clean laundry is spread across the tops of the bushes, the pale linen and dark wool stark against the green leaves. The breeze coming off the river helps to dry and air the clothes, leaving them with a clean, fresh scent that is a mixture of river water, sunshine, and crushed greenery. It's a far cry from the stale, smoky smell of clothes dried indoors. Elspeth finds your family's tunics neatly folded. They are cleaner than you could ever get them at home, and they feel stiff and substantial. You hand her the payment, a few small coins that feel wholly inadequate for the amount of labor you have just witnessed. The work of a laundress was not just physically grueling, it was also often viewed with suspicion. They were women who worked in a public, marginal space, the riverbank, and had access to the intimate household linens of their clients. They were privy to the state of people's clothes, which could reveal much about their wealth, health, and habits. This intimacy could sometimes lead to gossip, and laundresses, like alewives, were sometimes stereotyped as being untrustworthy or having loose morals. A truly quirky and shocking historical detail is the substance sometimes used as a cleaning agent before harsh soaps were common: stale urine. The ammonia in aged urine was a powerful and effective stain remover and whitening agent. Large vats of it would be collected and used by fullers and laundresses. So the concept of clean in the past had a very different and much more pungent chemical reality. Thankfully for you, by this period, soap is more common, but the historical memory of that older method lingers. As you place the clean laundry in your now empty basket, you think about the sheer amount of human energy required to maintain a basic standard of living. We romanticize the idea of a simpler time, but for most people, life was an endless series of physically demanding tasks. There were no washing machines, no electric dryers. The clean clothes in your basket are the direct result of Elspeth's aching back and raw hands. Scholars who study women's work often emphasize how much of it was wet work: brewing, dyeing, and washing. These were jobs that involved constant contact with water, often cold and dirty, and they were almost exclusively performed by women of the lower classes. It was essential, unpleasant, and completely uncelebrated. You thank Elspeth and begin the walk home, your final trip of the day. The sun is now touching the horizon, casting long shadows across the city. The sounds of the workshops are dying down, replaced by the sounds of people heading home. Your journey today has taken you from the heart of the city to its edges, from high-skilled crafts to the most basic, grueling labor. You've seen the seen and the unseen, the celebrated and the scorned. And as the day draws to a close, you are about to witness one more form of essential labor, another job that relies on pure physical strength to provide a fundamental utility that we now take for granted. The simple act of bringing water into the home. The light is failing fast as you make your way back through the darkening streets. The orange glow of sunset has deepened to a dusky violet, and the familiar shapes of the houses are beginning to blur into a single, jagged silhouette against the sky. The day's heat is gone, replaced by the damp chill of the evening. Here and there, a warm yellow light flickers in a window as a household lights its first candle or rushlight of the night, a small, brave defiance against the encroaching darkness. Your own family's tallow dips are waiting in the basket, ready to do the same. The sounds of the city are changing once again. The industrial clamor of the workday has faded, replaced by more domestic noises. You hear the murmur of conversations from open doorways, the cry of a baby, the clatter of a pot being set on a hearth. The city is turning inward, retreating into the private spaces of home and family for the night. As you near your own lane, you have to stand aside to make way for a common sight at this time of day. The water bearers. These are the people tasked with supplying the city's households with water for cooking, washing, and drinking. While a few very wealthy homes and monasteries might have their own private wells, and some areas had public fountains fed by aqueducts, most of the city's population relied on water being carried, by hand, from the river or from designated public wells. This evening, the water bearer serving your street is a young woman, not much older than yourself. The apparatus of her trade is simple and brutal. She carries a wooden yoke across her shoulders, a long, curved piece of wood designed to distribute weight. From each end of the yoke, a large wooden bucket hangs on a rope. The buckets are full to the brim with water, and they slosh and sway with her every step, splashing small amounts onto the cobblestones. You watch her as she makes her slow, careful way down the lane. Her face is set in a mask of concentration and exertion. Her steps are short and measured, a shuffling gait designed to minimize the swaying of the buckets. Her shoulders are hunched forward under the weight, and the muscles in her neck and back are visibly strained. This is not a job for the weak. A full bucket of water could weigh 30 or 40 pounds, meaning she is carrying a load of 60 to 80 pounds on her shoulders. This was another of the city's essential, low-status and physically grueling jobs, and it was frequently performed by women. Like the laundresses, the water bearers, or cobs, as they were sometimes called, provided a basic utility that was fundamental to urban life. Without them, every household would have to fetch its own water, a time-consuming and arduous task. By specializing, they created a microeconomy, selling their strength and endurance for a small fee. The young woman stops at a house a few doors down from yours. The owner comes out with an empty bucket and a coin. The water bearer carefully and with visible relief lowers the yoke from her shoulders, setting the heavy buckets on the ground. Her whole body seems to sigh with the release of the weight. She then uses a ladle to transfer the water from her buckets to the household's bucket. The transaction is swift. The coin is exchanged, and the woman prepares to lift her heavy burden once more. You see her brace herself, bending her knees and setting her shoulders before hoisting the yoke back into place. She settles it, adjusts its position, and then begins her slow, shuffling walk again, heading for the next customer. She might make this trip from the river or the well dozens of times a day, from dawn until dusk. Her entire day is a cycle of carrying immense weight, a repetitive strain that would take a heavy toll on her body over time. A curious historical fact is that this trade was also, like many others, subject to civic regulation. In some cities, water bearers had to be licensed, and there were rules about where they could draw their water from to ensure it was as clean as possible. There were also disputes. Court records show cases of water bearers fighting over access to the best wells or accusing each other of stealing customers. It was a competitive business, a constant hustle for survival on the city's bottom rung. The existence of a female water bearer challenges our assumptions about gender and physical strength. We often think of heavy labor in the past as being an exclusively male domain, but the reality was that poverty and necessity made no such distinctions. If a woman was strong enough to do the work, and the work needed doing, she did it. The ideal of the delicate, sheltered woman was a luxury that the vast majority of the population could not afford. For a working-class woman, her own physical strength was a primary economic asset. As you finally reach your own door, you think of the water in your family's own barrel, just inside. You realize you have never given a second thought to how it gets there. It is simply there, a resource you use without consideration. But now, seeing the strain on that young woman's face, you understand that this simple resource is the product of someone else's intense physical pain. Your long day of errands has been an education in the hidden mechanics of the city. You have seen how its people are fed, clothed, and given light. You have seen how they are healed, how they fight for their rights, and how they are kept clean. And now you have seen how they are given water. Almost every step of the way, you have seen women at the center of this work, not as helpers, but as the primary agents. They are the bakers, brewers, merchants, artists, healers, and laborers. They are the invisible engine that keeps the entire complex machine of the city running. As you step inside your home, into the flickering candlelight, a sudden cry from a neighboring house pierces the evening quiet, signaling the start of one final, and perhaps most vital, form of female labor. You have barely set your basket down and barred the door behind you when the cry comes. It's a sharp, urgent shout from a man's voice coming from the house next door. The time is here. Fetch the midwife. The words are laced with panic and hope. Immediately, the quiet evening atmosphere of your own home is broken. Your mother, who was just beginning to ladle out a simple pottage for supper, freezes, her spoon halfway to a bowl. A moment later, you hear the sound of running footsteps in the lane, the man from next door racing off to find the person he needs. Your own house falls silent, everyone listening. The sounds from next door are now muffled but unmistakable. A woman's low groan, a murmur of comforting words from another female voice, likely her mother or a sister, and then another, sharper cry of pain. This is the beginning of the most universal and fundamental of all human dramas, childbirth. And at its center is a figure of immense importance in the community, another profession dominated entirely by women, the midwife. In a few minutes, you hear new footsteps approaching, quick and purposeful. A firm knock sounds on your neighbor's door. It opens and closes, and then a new voice joins the others inside, a voice that is calm, authoritative, and reassuring. The midwife has arrived. The midwife was a cornerstone of medieval society. She was a medical practitioner whose specialty was pregnancy, birth, and postpartum care. This was a realm from which male physicians were almost entirely excluded, both by custom and by a sense of modesty. Childbirth was women's business, a sacred and private space where men, with the exception of the terrified father-to-be, were not welcome. The midwife's skill was not learned from books or in a university. Like the herbalist, she was a keeper of practical, experiential knowledge, passed down through generations of women. She was often an older woman, a mother herself, who had attended hundreds of births. She knew the signs of labor, the ways to ease a mother's pain, and the techniques to handle a difficult or complicated delivery. As you eat your simple supper of gritty bread and vegetable stew, the sounds from next door are a constant, dramatic backdrop. You hear the midwife's calm, steady voice giving instructions. You hear the ebb and flow of the laboring woman's cries. It is a raw, elemental sound, a reminder of the fragility and power of life. The role of the midwife was complex. She was, first and foremost, a medical professional. She might use herbal remedies to speed up or slow down labor. She knew how to manually turn a baby who was in the wrong position, and in the most desperate of circumstances, she might have to perform a rudimentary form of surgery to save either the mother or the child. A quirky and rather grim historical fact is that some midwives carried specialized knives for this very purpose, a sign of the life and death decisions they were forced to make. But her role was also deeply spiritual and social. The moment of birth was fraught with religious significance. It was believed that a newborn was in immediate danger from evil spirits and original sin. Therefore, a midwife was often empowered to perform an emergency baptism if it seemed the baby might not survive long enough for a priest to be called. She would say the correct words and sprinkle the baby's head with water, ensuring its soul would be saved. This gave her a level of religious authority that was highly unusual for a laywoman. She was also a community leader. A good midwife was respected, trusted, and sought after. Her presence at a birth was a source of immense comfort to the laboring mother and her family. She was the calm center in a storm of pain and fear. However, like the herbalist, the midwife's power also made her vulnerable. Because she operated at the threshold of life and death, she was the one who was often blamed when things went wrong. If a mother or baby died, which was tragically common, Whispers of incompetence or even malevolence could follow the midwife. In the later witch hunts, midwives were a frequent target of accusations. Their intimate knowledge of the female body and herbal remedies twisted into evidence of witchcraft. It was a profession of high stakes, high respect, and high risk. Historians debate the effectiveness of medieval midwives. Without knowledge of germ theory, practices we would now see as unhygienic were common. Yet these women successfully delivered millions of babies, and their practical, hands-on knowledge was undoubtedly life-saving in many instances. They represented the best medical care available to the vast majority of the population. Hours pass. The candle in your own home has burned low. Your brother has fallen asleep, his breathing eased by the herbal infusion. You and your parents sit in the quiet, the tension from next door a palpable presence in the room. Then suddenly the nature of the sounds changes. The cries of pain cease, and after a moment of profound silence, a new sound cuts through the night. The thin, wailing cry of a newborn baby. A collective sigh of relief seems to pass through your own house. Your mother makes the sign of the cross, a silent prayer of thanks. The midwife's work is done. She has guided another new life safely into the world, navigating the perilous passage of birth with her skill, her hands, and her ancient knowledge. She is the guardian of the city's future, the facilitator of its continuation. Her work, conducted behind the closed doors of the birthing chamber, is the most vital and least visible of all the female professions you have considered today. She doesn't produce a commodity to be sold in the market, but her product is life itself. The baby's cries from next door soon soften into a quiet murmur, a new thread woven into the tapestry of the night's sounds. The tension that held your household captive has dissipated, replaced by a shared, unspoken sense of communal relief and quiet joy. Life goes on. A new soul has joined the bustling, chaotic world of the city. You feel a profound sense of weariness settle deep into your bones. It has been a long, long day, a journey that has taken you through every stratum of the city's working life. Your mother banks the fire, covering the glowing embers with ash to preserve them for the morning. It's a final, hopeful act of the day, a preparation for the next cycle of work that will begin in just a few short hours. You and your brother are already on your straw pallets. The single room is lit now only by the faintest orange glow from the hearth. The shadows are deep in the corners, and the world outside the single shuttered window is a sea of darkness and quiet. You pull the coarse wool blanket up to your chin. Your body aches from the walking, from the heavy basket, from the simple, cumulative effort of a day lived in this time. But your mind is buzzing. You are not just thinking about your sore feet or the lingering smell of tallow and bread that clings to your clothes. You are thinking about the women you saw today. Before this day, your world was defined by the familiar labor of your own home, the kneading of dough, the heat of the oven. But your errands have pulled back a curtain, revealing a hidden, parallel world of female industry that underpins everything. You picture Agnes, the formidable alewife, her strong arms effortlessly lifting a barrel. You see the market women, their faces sharp with calculation as they haggle over prices, their hands deft as they weigh out cheese and vegetables. You recall the almost supernatural quiet of the silkwoman's workshop, the intense, focused energy of women creating luxury from a worm's cocoon. You think of the chandler, her hands permanently slick with grease, her repetitive motions a dance that holds back the night. You remember the boisterous heat of Beatrice's cookshop, a woman feeding the city's hungry workforce with pies and stews. You see again the surprising sight of the woman with the book, a hint of a world of female intellect and artistry. You smell the dry, fragrant air of the herbalist's home, a sanctuary of ancient, plant-based wisdom. You hear the firm, clear voice of the widow, defending her home not with a weapon, but with the law and a piece of paper. You feel the rhythmic scrape of the wool cards and hear the percussive beat of the weaver's loom, the foundation of a global industry. You see the raw, aching labor of the laundress by the cold river, and the strange shoulders of the water bearer, hauling life's most essential substance up from the well. And finally, you hear the calm, authoritative voice of the midwife, guiding new life into the world in a darkened room. It's like you've been shown the inner workings of a vast and complex machine that you never knew existed. You always saw the city as a place of men's work: the blacksmith, the mason, the merchant, the priest. But you realize now that this is only half the story, the more visible, more loudly proclaimed half. Beneath it, alongside it, and woven inextricably through, it is a web of women's labor. It is the work that happens inside homes, in small back alley workshops on the riverbanks, and in the birthing chambers. It is the work of sustenance and survival, of craft and commerce, of healing and community. This is the boring history for sleep that is never boring. It is the story of the forgotten majority. It is the realization that the city would collapse in a day without them. There would be no bread, no ale, no clothes, no light, no medicine, no clean linens, no new generation. It would grind to a halt. The resilience of this place is not just in its stone walls or its powerful guilds. It is in the tired hands of the laundress, the sharp mind of the widow, and the steady nerve of the midwife. It is a strength that is quiet, persistent, and absolutely essential. Your thoughts begin to slow, the images blurring at the edges. The lumpy straw of your palate feels almost comfortable now, your body too tired to notice its imperfections. The faint sounds from outside, a distant dog barking, the soft footsteps of the night watchman on his rounds, are a gentle, lulling rhythm. You are part of this city, this great, struggling, striving organism. You are a child of the baker, but you are also a witness to the alewife, the merchant, and the weaver. You carry their stories with you now. As your breathing deepens and your mind finally begins to release the day, you drift off to sleep, cradled in the heart of a world held together by the strong and largely invisible hands of women. As the last echoes of that medieval city fade, allow your own mind to soften and slow. Feel the story releasing its hold, leaving behind just a gentle sense of appreciation. The world you journeyed through was one of constant, grinding effort, where comfort was a rare luxury and survival a daily achievement. The lives of those women, the artisans, the healers, the laborers, were etched with a resilience that is both humbling and inspiring. Their struggles for agency, for income, for a small measure of control in a world not built for them, laid an invisible foundation for the freedoms and opportunities that would take centuries to build. Think for a moment of the simple comforts that surround you now. The softness of your bed, the quiet stillness of your room, the clean water that flows with a simple turn of a handle, the light that appears with the flick of a switch. These are the legacies of centuries of human ingenuity, the fruits of a relentless drive to escape the very hardships you've just witnessed. The quiet hum of your refrigerator is the ghost of the cookshop's struggle against spoilage. The gentle glow of your alarm clock is the descendant of the chandler's smoky, greasy toil. Let a wave of gratitude wash over you, an appreciation for the immense, unseen labor of the past that makes your present peace possible. Let the stories of the alewife, the silkwoman, and the midwife dissolve into the quiet of your own breathing. Their world of noise and grit and relentless effort can now fall away, leaving only a profound sense of calm. There is no more work to be done, no more errands to run. There is only the stillness of this moment, the safety of your bed, and the gentle pull of deep, restorative sleep. Let the past sing you to sleep. Your journey is over. Rest now.